The sky above Earth was a shimmer of metal and light as the alien fleet hovered silently over the planet, with a presence that could freeze the heart of any ordinary being. But humans were never ordinary. They had fought wars on Earth that had scarred continents and tamed nature in ways no other species could even imagine. And now these creatures with sleek hulls and glowing energy cores looked down at humanity as if they were children playing with fire in their hands. The first communications from the alien leaders were dripping with condescension. They laughed at human technology, calling their weapons primitive, obsolete, and amusingly slow. The broadcasts were loud and clear across all channels, and every human on the planet felt the sting of mockery, yet beneath that laughter was an invisible fire of determination, a quiet resolve that humans had carried since the dawn of civilization. The leaders of humanity convened in the deep command bunkers beneath the mountains where the air was thick with the hum of machinery and the tension of anticipation. They studied alien schematics and intercepted communications, trying to understand how a species so advanced could be so blind to the unpredictable nature of humanity. Soldiers and engineers moved with purpose. Weapons were loaded and recalibrated, machines hummed with energy, and in hidden laboratories devices unknown, even to the aliens, were being readied for deployment. Humans had learned to turn even the most mundane objects into weapons, and while the aliens saw rifles and cannons, they could not see the modifications and enhancements that made them capable of feats beyond imagination across the cities. Civilians watched the skies in awe and fear. Children clutched their parents' hands, and workers paused from their daily routines, everyone aware that history was being made in the silence of the skies. The first probes of alien ships were met with small but precise human responses. Tactical drones that darted through the shadows and electromagnetic pulses that disrupted sensors, momentarily giving humans a glimpse of the aliens' reliance on technology. And yet the humans did not panic. Instead, they adapted quickly, using the environment as their ally. Forests became barriers and mountains became shields. Rivers turned into traps, and the air itself carried signals of deception. Humans had learned that every weakness could become a weapon, every misstep an advantage. The first skirmishes were brief but revealing human ingenuity shown as soldiers used guerrilla tactics that no alien could anticipate. They hid behind ruined structures and improvised barriers, turned entire streets into labyrinths of ambushes. And while the aliens had superior firepower, they had never encountered a species willing to fight with every ounce of cunning and desperation that humanity could muster. Leaders of the alien fleet communicated among themselves, their voices filled with disbelief and irritation. They had expected an easy assessment and perhaps a swift demonstration of superiority. But humanity resisted with an intelligence and unpredictability that made their mockery seem foolish. The humans had suffered through centuries of survival on a volatile planet where nature itself could kill with a single misstep, and they had learned to turn adversity into strength. And now the aliens were about to discover that the same hands they had mocked could wield power beyond imagination as night fell across Earth. The glow of alien lights cast long shadows over the cities, yet humans did not cower. They moved swiftly from one position to another, coordinating silently through encrypted channels. The soldiers shared a quiet camaraderie, born from training and trust in their leaders, and in one hidden valley, a small human squad prepared the first true weapon, the one that would show the aliens that their arrogance was premature. Their hearts beat in rhythm with the hum of the machinery, and when the moment came, the first shot would be fired, not as a plea or a warning, but as a declaration that humanity would not be mocked. And the aliens above still laughed, unaware that laughter could be a prelude to their own astonishment that the species they called primitive was ready to change the course of the battle before it had even begun. And in that moment, the entire planet seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the first sign that the underestimated humans were about to become the predators the universe had ignored, and no one could have guessed how quickly the laughter would turn to silence. The first strike came without warning. The earth beneath the alien ships quaked as a weapon that had been years in the making came online. The humans had been quiet in their preparations, but when they fired, the aliens saw the truth of human ingenuity. In a single flash of light, a massive pulse of energy surged from beneath the surface of the earth. It cascaded through the air like a violent wave of power lashing out against the invaders. It was not a conventional weapon. Nothing the aliens had ever faced before could have anticipated it. The electromagnetic pulse spread like wildfire, instantly knocking out all communication systems across the alien fleet. Their ships swerved wildly in an attempt to regain control, but their advanced systems failed them. Their high-tech sensors and targeting systems became nothing more than confused signals. The aliens had underestimated the power of human will and human technology. Their fleet, now blind and vulnerable in a heartbeat, chaos spread. Through the ranks of the alien commanders, they had thought themselves the superior species. But now they were left grasping at the air, trying to piece together why their perfect systems had been rendered useless by something so crude and unrefined. A weapon that used the planet's own resources and simple technology to render them blind to the world they had come to conquer. Panic rippled through the alien forces, their ships firing wildly into space, not knowing where their targets were. The humans had turned the tide with a single well-timed strike, and it was only the beginning. Humanity's true weaponry had yet to be revealed. But now it was clear to the aliens that their assumption that human weapons were primitive was not just wrong. It was fatal. They scrambled to re-establish their systems, but in doing so, they left themselves wide open to attack the humans. Did not waste a moment, they pounced as predators would on a wounded prey. Their ships emerged from hidden bases on Earth's surface, ready to strike with their full force. Humanity had hidden their true capabilities beneath layers of secrecy. For this very moment, the aliens had expected rockets and missiles. Conventional weapons they had dismissed as insignificant, but they had failed to realize the humans had adapted these technologies with something far more dangerous and far more cunning. They fired everything they had from the surface, from high above, and from the depths of Earth's atmosphere. The alien fleet began to splinter under the sheer unexpected force of human retaliation laser beams that cut through alien hulls. With ease, missiles that struck with surgical precision, not just random shots, but pinpoint strikes aimed at weak points. The alien ships that had been designed to withstand entire wars without a scratch were now crumbling like fragile shells beneath the assault. Humanity's weapons were crude in comparison, but they were no longer fighting just with weapons. They were fighting with a spirit that could not be broken. The aliens who had once laughed at them now watched as their fleet was torn apart. Piece by piece, the humans had a way of surprising their enemies, of striking when they were least expected, and in this moment the aliens had no idea what they were facing. A species capable of turning even the most basic tools into instruments of destruction. The humans' first wave had done far more damage than the aliens ever expected. They had knocked out half of the invading fleet, leaving the remaining ships scrambling to regroup. A sense of fear spread across the alien commanders. The first wave had been nothing more than a test, a glimpse into the true potential of humanity. Now that the aliens were reeling, the humans were ready to bring out their final weapons. The world was no longer the same. Earth was no longer the helpless prey the aliens thought it was. Now they were facing a planet that had a pulse of its own, a planet that could strike back with a ferocity that matched the will of its people across the continents. Humanity's soldiers readied their final assault in underground bunkers and hidden cities, from space stations and deep in the oceans. The final preparations were made. The world had come together not just to defend, but to strike back with everything it had. Humanity had shown its claws, and now it was time to tear through the alien forces with everything they had. The aliens could no longer afford to underestimate humanity. They had seen the destruction humanity could cause, but they still failed to understand the true strength of the human spirit. It was not just the weapons or the technology that made them dangerous. It was the relentless will to survive, to fight to the very last breath, to the very last drop of blood. And as the remaining alien ships regrouped and attempted to flee, they would soon learn that humanity's wrath would not be so easily escaped, no matter how powerful they were. Humanity would hunt them down with relentless fury, and they would never forget the mistake of laughing at the so-called primitive species that had turned the universe on its head. The alien fleet regrouped, but the damage was already done. Their once immaculate formation now fractured as their ships scrambled in confusion. Humanity's initial strike had sent shockwaves through the invaders, but it wasn't just the firepower that was terrifying to the aliens. It was the realization that humans weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting to protect something far greater, something that gave them an unshakable resolve, something the aliens had never encountered before. The very planet they sought to conquer now seemed like an unyielding fortress. The moment the first wave of human retaliation hit the alien fleet, The invaders were quick to respond. Their commanders barked orders. Their advanced technology hummed to life, but it wasn't enough. Their systems had been shattered, their communication lines cut. And in the vacuum of confusion, human forces surged forward with precision that the aliens couldn't replicate. Humanity's small but nimble warships darted through the chaos like hunting dogs, tracking down the broken ships that tried to flee to regroup. Humanity's weapons may have seemed primitive to the aliens, but their tactics were anything but. When it came to war, humans had learned not to fight with brute force alone, but with cunning and strategy that outwitted every foe they faced. Humans didn't just fight on land or in space. They fought with their minds. Every soldier and commander understood the battlefield in ways that made their enemies' advanced technology look inefficient. The alien ships began to scatter, hoping to escape. But humans followed relentlessly, never giving them a moment's peace. The atmosphere of Earth itself had become a battleground. The sky was filled with the sounds of explosive firepower. Ships broke apart in midair and streaked across the heavens in fiery trails as human technology tore through alien hulls like paper. Their earlier mockery of human firepower was now being replaced by fear. Their calculations had been wrong. The aliens had believed that once their forces took control of the skies and the land, humanity would crumble in the face of overwhelming force. But instead, the humans adapted. They fought not just with weapons but with desperation, a desperation fueled by their deep connection to their world, their survival instincts locked into a state of war. Every human knew the stakes. It wasn't just about defeating the alien fleet. It was about proving to the universe that humanity was not to be underestimated, and that belief now fueled their every action. The remaining alien ships tried to regroup and form a counteroffensive, but their strategies were crippled. They had never faced an enemy that adapted so quickly to their every move. Human warships emerged from hidden bases and underground cities. They came from every corner of Earth's surface, attacking from angles the aliens had not anticipated and forcing them into a brutal retreat. But the humans did not relent. They didn't wait for the enemy to regroup. They pushed forward with the ferocity of a species that had been written off as weak for centuries, but now would not be denied as the alien ships attempted to return fire. The humans intercepted them with tactical strikes that tore through shields and pierced deep into the heart of their fleet. The shock of this relentless assault reverberated across the invaders. The alien commanders grew desperate. They sent waves of reinforcements to protect the damaged ships. But no matter how many ships they launched, the humans always had a countermeasure ready to meet them with even more firepower. And yet, even as the tide shifted in humanity's favor, the aliens still could not grasp the true nature of their enemy. They thought they had technology that outclassed anything humans could muster, but now they saw it was not the weapons or the ships that made the difference. It was the indomitable human spirit, the drive to never give up, to fight to the end against any force, no matter how overwhelming. As alien ships tried to maneuver and escape, they were met by waves of human fighters cutting them off from every direction. Humanity had made the world its battleground, and now they would make it their victory ground, and so the battle raged on with both sides struggling for control, but with every passing hour the balance of power tilted in favor of the humans. Their attacks were more precise, their strategies more unpredictable, and as the final alien ships attempted to break free, they found themselves trapped in a web of human determination. Humanity's power was no longer in their weapons alone. It was in the very will that had kept them alive for millennia. And now that same will was tearing the alien fleet apart piece by piece. The universe had underestimated humanity once before, and it would not make the same mistake again. The aliens had laughed at human weapons, but it was their laughter that would soon be replaced by disbelief as humanity's final assault began. And soon enough the invaders would come to understand the true price of mocking a species that had survived and thrived through every adversity the universe had thrown at them. The alien fleet had been shattered, but the invaders refused to yield. They were warriors born of a species that had conquered countless worlds. But now they faced something they could not comprehend. The humans had become a force of nature, something unpredictable and fierce with every passing moment. The odds stacked against the aliens grew heavier. They had expected to break humanity in the first strike, but instead, they had found themselves the ones on the defensive, the Last remnants of the alien fleet regrouped and made their final stand in the vast expanse of space, just beyond the Earth's atmosphere. Their ships had been damaged, but not destroyed, and they prepared for what they believed would be a final assault, to wipe out the last of humanity's resistance. But the aliens had underestimated the humans' ability to adapt. The humans had prepared for this moment. They knew that even after the first strike, they would not be able to finish the battle in one swift motion. Instead, they had taken a different approach. They had struck the alien fleet where it hurt most, not just physically, but psychologically. The humans had shown them that no matter how advanced their technology was, they would never break humanity's spirit. Every alien commander knew that even if they won the battle, they would never be able to erase the fear they had instilled in their enemies. They had crossed a line. They had mocked humanity's weapons only to find themselves fighting against a force they could not defeat. The remaining human warships now moved with a new kind of purpose. They weren't just hunting down the aliens. They were hunting down every last vestige of their overconfidence. The battle had become personal, no longer just about victory, but about proving a point. The aliens had dismissed humanity for far too long, and now they would see what that mistake had cost them. Human warships, once small and underestimated, had grown in strength. They were faster, more efficient. Their technology had evolved in the span of days, using the very alien systems they had captured from destroyed ships. The humans' ingenuity was their greatest weapon, and now the invaders felt it with every strike they unleashed, with every turn of the tide. The alien ships began to retreat, trying to regroup and fight back. But the human forces were relentless. They pounded them from every angle. Their precision attacks targeted weak points in the alien ships. Their powerful electromagnetic pulses disabled the remaining defenses of the invaders, leaving them exposed to the human onslaught. Even the alien flagship, the last symbol of their power, had been rendered vulnerable. The humans were closing in. They knew the alien commanders were struggling to maintain control of their forces, and so they pressed harder. The humans fought, not just to defend their world, but to erase every trace of the alien invaders' belief that they could simply take what was not theirs. Humanity's warships came in waves, and the alien fleet was slowly but surely being torn apart. Piece by piece, the remaining alien ships tried to flee, but they found themselves trapped in a deadly web of human strategy and relentless assault. The humans anticipated their every move. They were prepared for the desperation of a retreat and had set traps for any fleeing ships. The aliens could not outrun the onslaught no matter how fast their ships were. The humans had learned to fight not just with speed, but with patience and precision, and so the battle continued. The final stand of the alien fleet became less of a fight for survival and more of a fight for pride. But even that was slipping away. The humans had taken everything from them: their arrogance, their superiority, their belief in their invincibility. The humans had erased it all with every shot, every maneuver, every sacrifice. The final alien ship attempts to make a last-ditch effort to break through human defenses, but it is intercepted before it can even make it to the edge of space. A final explosion marks the end of the invaders' attempt to dominate Earth, and silence falls over the battlefield. But it is not a silence of peace. It is a silence of disbelief, a silence of awe. As the humans stand victorious, the alien fleet has been destroyed, but more than that, humanity has proven something far greater than their ability to fight. They have proven that they will never again be underestimated. They have proven that when their backs are against the wall, there is no force in the universe capable of breaking their spirit. The dust of battle settled over Earth's skies, and the alien fleet lay in ruin, scattered fragments of their once proud ships drifting in space as reminders of their failed invasion, and the bitter truth: the invaders had underestimated humanity's will to survive and fight back. The remaining alien commanders who had survived the carnage were left to question everything they had believed about humanity. Their arrogant assumptions had been shattered along with their fleets. Now they knew the cost of their mistake. The humans had not just defended their home. They had turned the alien invasion into an example for the universe to see that when it came to survival, no force could outmatch humanity's determination. The battle had not just been a war for Earth. It had been a message. Humanity's victory was heard across the stars as news of the alien fleet's destruction spread among other species in the galaxy. The aliens had believed that their advanced technology and vast fleets would allow them to conquer and control. But what they had failed to account for was humanity's adaptability, their creativity, and their unyielding resolve. No matter the odds, humanity had never once accepted defeat. And now the universe would know that this small planet on the edge of the galaxy could take on even the mightiest forces. The alien leaders were broken and defeated, but their pride still held on. They could not accept the fact that a species they had considered primitive could have bested them so thoroughly. But it was clear to every alien species watching the aftermath of the battle that humanity was not to be trifled with. Their weapons, their technology, their strategies had not just outmatched the aliens, they had surpassed them. And as Earth's skies cleared from the smoke of war, the human leaders looked toward the future. They had won the battle. But they knew this was only the beginning. No longer would they be the underdogs in the galactic theater. Humanity had earned their place among the stars. They had proven themselves in the fires of combat, and now they would take their seat at the table of power. Humanity's victory brought with it a new era, a new beginning. The species that had once been mocked for its so-called primitive ways was now seen as a force that would shape the galaxy. No one could look at Earth and its people the same way. Again, they were no longer a species to be ignored or underestimated. They were a species to be respected, feared, and acknowledged. Earth had become a symbol of hope and defiance to all those who had suffered under the rule of the alien invaders. A planet that had fought back and emerged victorious against the most powerful forces the universe had to offer as humans began to rebuild and heal from the scars of battle. They didn't just restore their cities, they restored their spirit. They knew that the alien threat had been defeated, but other challenges lay ahead. The universe was vast and filled with dangers, but humanity had learned something invaluable from this war. They had learned that no matter how great the challenge, how insurmountable the odds, they could always rise. They could always adapt, and no one could ever take. That from them the alien invaders had come to Earth believing they could conquer the humans with ease. They had laughed at humanity's weapons and thought their technology superior. They had underestimated the one thing that made humanity unstoppable, the human spirit. They had learned their lesson too late. And now the galaxy would remember humanity as the species that would never kneel, the species that had fought and won with everything they had. And in that victory, humanity not only earned the respect of the galaxy, they also earned a new role as guardians of their world, protectors of their people, and warriors who would stand against any force that dared threaten their home, no matter how mighty or overwhelming. And the humans had only just begun. The war had ended, but the fight for their place in the galaxy was only beginning, and they would take that fight to the stars with the same relentless courage that had made them victors on their homeworld in the wake of humanity's victory. The universe had changed, but the aliens had not forgotten the humiliation their forces had faced. They had underestimated humanity, and now the realization of their mistake rippled through the galaxy. For the first time since the invasion began, the alien leaders were no longer confident. They had been beaten not just by human weapons, but by the sheer force of will that the humans had displayed in the heat of battle. They had seen their fleet fall apart as humans adapted and outwitted them. At every turn they had seen the resilience of humanity, the unwillingness to accept defeat, and the commitment to fight until the very last breath for the right to survive. And now they had to face the consequences. The alien races who had once thought of Earth as nothing more than a small, insignificant planet in the far reaches of the galaxy now watched as the humans gathered their strength. They had won the battle, but the war for respect was far from over. Humanity had shown its might in a way that no one had ever expected, but in the aftermath of that victory they knew the fight was not finished. It had only just begun. The humans knew that the galaxy would remember them now, but they had also learned the hard lesson that being underestimated had its consequences. If the aliens had thought them weak before, they had learned the hard way that humans were anything but weak. They were a species of warriors, a species that had survived against all odds, that had risen from the ashes time and time again, and now they had proven that they would stop at nothing to protect what was theirs. But humanity was not just about survival. They were also about progress. They knew they had to prepare for whatever came next. They had no illusions about the future. The universe was vast and filled with unknown dangers. The victory over the alien invaders was just the beginning. Now they had to build on that foundation. They had to show that humanity's power was not just in its weapons, but in its ability to adapt, to grow, and to thrive in the face of adversity. Across Earth's cities, and in the hidden chambers of government leaders, made plans, they began forging alliances with other species that had taken notice of humanity's strength. They knew that their enemies were not gone forever. The aliens would not rest until they had recovered from their defeat, and that meant humanity had to be ready. Their soldiers trained harder than ever. Their scientists worked day and night to improve technology that would ensure their defense against any future threats, and the human spirit remained unbroken. With every challenge they had faced, they had become stronger. Their unity and determination had brought them through the darkest days, and now those very same qualities would help them move forward into the unknown. They knew the galaxy was watching, and humanity had proven it was capable of much more than anyone had thought possible. No longer would they be a footnote in the history of the galaxy. They had written their own chapter, and they had done so in blood and fire. And as humanity began to prepare for the next phase of its journey, their message was clear. They were no longer the underdogs. They were no longer the species to be underestimated. The galaxy had seen the full extent of what humanity could do, and now the universe would have to reckon with them. Humanity's place in the cosmos was no longer in question. They had earned their respect through sacrifice, through blood, and through battle, but they had also earned their right to be a part of the galactic stage, and that right would not be taken from them, no matter who stood against them. And so, as humanity rebuilt and moved forward, they knew they had earned something far greater than victory. They had earned the right to be feared and respected by all, and they would take that right with them wherever they went. Whether it was on Earth or beyond the stars, humanity's mark had been made, and now they would continue to fight to ensure that their place in the galaxy remained unchallenged. The alien fleet was no more, and the galaxy had been forever changed by the force of humanity's will. The aftermath of the battle left Earth scarred but resolute. The skies once filled with the smoke and wreckage of the fallen alien ships now held a quiet peace, a peace that had come at a great cost, but one that was earned by the blood and sacrifice of every human who had fought. To protect their home, the Earth was still their world. But now the universe knew that humanity was not to be ignored. No longer would they cower before the might of superior forces. No longer would they be seen as weak or primitive. Now humanity stood tall among the stars. Their victory over the invaders had sent shockwaves through every corner of the galaxy. Other species who had once dismissed Earth as insignificant now looked to it with a newfound respect. Even fear humanity had earned its place as a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy would never forget the message it had sent. The humans were not just survivors, they were conquerors in their own right. The war had tested them, but in the end, it had made them stronger and more united than ever before. But even as the human soldiers returned home to cheers and celebrations, they knew the battle was not over. The alien invaders had been driven back, but their allies, their empires, their hidden forces still lurked in the dark corners of the galaxy, waiting for the right moment to strike. They had learned nothing from their defeat other than how to regroup and recover. But humanity had learned from their victory. Humanity knew that complacency was their enemy. They would never allow themselves to be caught off guard again. And so the rebuilding began, not just on Earth, but across every human colony. The war had left scars on their cities. But the humans had always been resilient. They would rebuild and make their cities stronger than before. Every structure, every weapon, every piece of technology was carefully designed to ensure they would never be caught unprepared again. New alliances were forged with other species who had seen humanity's strength and who were eager to stand beside them in future conflicts. And with these new allies came new knowledge, new technologies, and new challenges. Humanity's eyes now turned to the stars, and they set their sights on exploring the unknown. They were no longer afraid of what lay beyond their world. They had proven that they could face any threat, no matter how powerful, no matter how overwhelming, and they were ready to take their place in the galaxy as leaders and warriors. The humans would never forget what they had lost during the war, but they would also never forget what they had gained. They had gained respect. They had gained strength. They had gained the understanding that their true power lay not in their weapons or technology, but in their spirit, their unwavering will to survive, their ability to adapt and to fight when all seemed lost. And now that spirit would carry them into a new era, a new age where humanity would no longer be the underdogs but would rise to the forefront of the galactic stage. They had earned their right to be here, and they would not be silenced or oppressed again. Humanity's victory had sent a clear message to the universe. They were not to be underestimated. They were not to be mocked. They were not to be ignored. And in the silent aftermath of the battle, as the stars glimmered above Earth, they knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it with the same courage that had carried them through the darkest days of the war. They were humanity, and no matter the odds, no matter the enemies that came their way, they would stand tall. They would never back down, and they would never be defeated. And as the final echoes of the alien defeat faded into the distance, humanity stood united not just as survivors, but as victors. Their story had just begun, and the universe would soon learn that no one could ever forget the name of humanity, because it would be written in the stars with the ink of victory and the fire of triumph. Humanity's mark had been made, and it would never be erased. And so with that, they moved forward, their place in the galaxy secured forever. The universe had been, forever, changed. Humanity's victory over the alien fleet had become a legend whispered across galaxies and etched into the history of every species that had witnessed the battle. And though Earth's skies were now clear and peaceful, the scars of war lingered. Humanity knew that their victory had not been without cost, and yet there was a new sense of purpose in the air, a collective realization that their place among the stars had been earned through sacrifice, through strategy, and through a relentless will to survive. They had faced an enemy that had dismissed them as weak. They had faced destruction and loss beyond anything they had ever imagined, and yet they had come out on top. Their weapons had not been the most advanced, their ships had not been the largest, but their spirit had been unbreakable. The alien invaders had thought they could take Earth with ease. They had thought that humanity's primitive technology and small numbers would make them easy prey. But they had not accounted for the fire that burned in the hearts of humans. They had not accounted for the ingenuity that could turn anything into a weapon, or the minds that could adapt to any challenge when faced with extinction. Humanity had risen from the ashes stronger than before. Their victory had shaken the galaxy to its core, and it was a victory that would echo through the ages. Humanity had not only survived, they had become a symbol, a beacon of defiance and strength to every species that had once considered them insignificant. And now, as the last of the alien ships drifted in the void, humanity stood tall. Their leaders and soldiers alike knew that the future was uncertain, but they also knew that no force in the universe would ever again make the mistake of underestimating humanity. The humans had proven that they were not just survivors. They were warriors. They were a species that would fight with everything they had, no matter the cost and no matter the enemy. And now, as Earth began its slow recovery from the war, the humans turned their eyes toward the stars with renewed determination. They knew that their battle for survival was far from over, but they had learned something vital. In those dark days, they had learned that the universe could never break them. They would always rise no matter how hard the fight. They would always adapt. They would always survive, and they would always fight for the future of their people. They would continue to forge their path among the stars with the knowledge that they were no longer the prey but the predators, and anyone who dared challenge them would soon learn that humanity was not to be trifled with. No matter where they went, they would carry the lessons of their victory with them, and no enemy would ever again make the mistake of thinking they could defeat them. Humanity had made their mark on the galaxy, and it would never fade. They had proved their worth, and in doing so, had secured their place in the stars. The universe would know them by their strength, their resilience, and their refusal to ever be defeated. The end